Hi everyone, today we're going to start talking about foreshortening, and we're going to start foreshortening by foreshortening this bottle. We will be doing more foreshortening next week when we talk about foreshortening the figure, but this bottle is a good place to start. So we have this glass bottle here. If I hold my ruler up to it, you'll see it's just over 8 inches tall. And that it looks to be 8 inches tall if we are looking at it straight on. Another thing we can do is we can take this unit of measurement here, just the neck of the bottle. We could say how many times does the neck of the bottle go into this hole, right? So here's my unit of measurement that represents the neck of the bottle, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So right now we've got 4:1 ratio, and that's only if we're looking at it perfectly straight on. If we start to tilt it even a little bit, you probably notice a couple things going on. One is that it's getting compressed. So it's looking shorter. It doesn't stop being 8.5 inches tall, but it's looking shorter as it comes more close to us, or sort of as part of it comes more close to us. The other thing that you probably notice happening is this ellipse opens up more and more and more as it gets closer to the top, to the point where if we get this so that it's straight up and down, this ellipse becomes a fully open circle and the bottle looks incredibly short. So let's see if we can measure. So I can't even find a unit of measurement for the neck as a foreshortened object, but it definitely doesn't look like it's going to be 4:1, right? So we've got, say this is the neck, 1, 2, and you could see that it looks like, I'm almost at the bottom of the bottle here, maybe like 2. So it changes, the ratio changes. It doesn't look like this the closer that it gets sort of tilted up. And what you have to do when you foreshorten is you want to do a couple things. You want to figure out, first of all, what that ratio changes to. So if it's 4:1 here, is it 3:1 here or 2:1 here? You've got to kind of figure that out. The other thing that you might notice when you're foreshortening is we're sort of forcing a perspective onto this bottle. So even though the sides of this bottle are parallel, they're straight up and down, they look, as this part of it starts to come more towards us, they look like they're receding onto a vanishing point. So they look like they're getting wider as they come closer to us. So we need to apply 1-point perspective to the bottle. And I'm going to do it in a sort of a kind of extreme way, just to sort of exaggerate the foreshortening a little bit. So I'm going to look at the bottle as if I'm looking at it from above, and I'm going to start drawing it right now. I'm going to sketch it in very lightly with a 6H pencil. If you have a glass bottle, which I think a lot of you probably do, you'll notice that you get some really beautiful highlights and shadows on the glass bottle. So if you want to draw the glass bottle, I would suggest sketching it in really light, and that way when you do your shading, you can keep those highlights really bright. One of the things that makes glass look shiny is that closeness of a bright highlight to a dark, and the fact that they can be right beside each other is what ends up making it look really, really shiny. I'm starting by drawing the top ellipse at the top of the neck of the bottle, the mouth part of the bottle. And the way that I'm looking at it, this ellipse is really wide open. And I think it's even maybe a little bit wider than I have it. If you think back to early in the first unit or the second unit when we drew ellipses, you'll remember that this is how you check your ellipses. You want to have 4 equal quadrants. So you want your ellipse to be symmetrical. I also want to get in right now the width of that, the thickness of the glass, if I can. And that's interesting because that looks like not quite even all the way around. It looks a little bit compressed when it gets to this part, and then it gets wider over here. So that's just going to stand in for now. I might change that, but that's going to be my ellipse right now. I'm going to look at my neck of the bottle. Now I know that this is going to be tapering inward to some degree, so I'm going to try to measure that angle right now, and I might end up changing it. One thing I don't want to do when I do these is I don't want to taper too much, because I don't really want it to look exaggerated. I want it to look actually observed. And I don't want it to look like sort of a theoretical drawing or something that I just sort of made up. So I do want to get that taper right. I don't really want to get it, you know, exaggerated. So I think that the neck is tapering like this. And to me, the neck part of the bottle looks to be about this long. I hope I can fit the whole bottle in my horizontal page. Again, for you, just like a lot of the things we do, this would probably be better as a vertical composition. And I'm doing the horizontal to fit it in this video, but I hope that I can fit my bottle in. So now I'm going to check the proportions. If I decide that my neck of the bottle from the top of this to here is going to be this long, I need to see how many times this unit of measurement is going to go into the bottle as I see it foreshortened now. So it looks like just it's pretty steep, so it's just 1 and some change. So I'll definitely be able to fit it. So I go 1 here, and then I'm just going to give it, this is 1. I'm going to give it a little extra. It's not 1.5, but it's just like 1 and a little bit. So this is going to be the length of my bottle. The bottom of my bottle is going to come here. If I say that this is the center of this top ellipse, now I'm going to start dropping measuring lines, which I'm going to do quite a few of. What I want to do is I want to measure the very center of the ellipse from the top, and I want to see what does that come to on the bottom of the bottle. The bottom of the bottle has a square base, which is sort of challenging. Because I've got it tilted at an angle. So if I were looking at it straight on, and I was just looking at the flat part of the square base, I think that would be easier, but I kind of tilted it a little bit. So I have to figure out where that angle is. And it looks like if this is the bottom of the bottle, that I'm actually going to bring this down a little bit. There's this flat plane here. And it looks like it comes sort of between it somehow. So I'm going to kind of just block in where I think that plane is, or where I think that mark indicating the bottom of that edge of the base of the bottle is. And then I'm going to try to figure out some other marks. So one thing that I notice is that the bottom edge of the bottle from this side should come to about here on the inside of that ellipse. So let me make that happen. So this is going to be the edge of the bottle, and then it's going to have to taper out. And I probably should figure out now how much that's tapering. I measure an angle like this. I'm willing to change this later on if I don't like it, but that's what I measured on my first time. And where the kind of more the base part of the bottle starts is actually kind of, it goes behind the neck a little bit, and then it comes down at an angle like this. So my bottle is really, it's rounded and it's not really angular like this, but this is going to help me get everything sort of blocked in. So the inside of this ellipse should be at the point where this angle changes. So we're going to start seeing the other side of the base. This is tricky because on the bottom I barely see it at all, and that's due to this tapering. So I just really see kind of just a suggestion of it, and then it tapers outward. I think that's way too extreme. I'm going to measure that again. That's probably a little better. And then it comes behind here. I have these two parts of the bottle, and where this is actually above, this comes above where this one meets. And it starts just turning in right away. So I actually think that if this angle is right, which I'm not totally sure that it is, if this angle is right, maybe the angle's right and it just needs to be more narrow. so that it's actually going to come here. I really don't see much of this side at the bottom. It's almost, I almost see none of it. Right now I'm going to erase some of these measuring lines just because they're getting in my way, but you don't have to erase them unless they're bothering you. I'm going to measure this again because it just does not look right. And yet I get the same, I measure it again and I get the same angle. So we'll go with it for a little bit. We'll see what happens. So we have this rounded edge here. This doesn't end at a, this is very difficult to see, but it's like a sort of a square shape here. That's very hard to make out, but it's there. And then this is going to taper in. It still looks way too extreme to me. So what I'm going to do, and this is what I always suggest that you do, is I'm going to take a step back. If you step back from your drawing, you could see things with a clearer eye, a fresh eye, and it also lets you take in the whole. So when you get really close to your drawing, sometimes you tend to concentrate on the details and you can't see the big picture and you can't see things like perspective. And when I step back, it actually doesn't look as bad as I thought it did. It looks like it's foreshortened. And more importantly, it actually looks to be sitting on a flat ground. The one thing that I don't like when I step back is I feel like this ellipse isn't looking right. And I am not sure if it's too wide or if it's, I think it's too wide. So I think that this ellipse, it is wide, but I think I do need to squish it a little bit. But I think that this could work. The rest of this could work. There are some minor detail changes that I would want to make. Like this side, it actually sort of, you know, it's glass, so it's rounded a little bit. It's not like a perfect square anywhere. So anywhere where I have that little bit of a bulge, or that little bit of a angular thing, I would want to kind of make a bulge. I also think that this isn't right. I think this is actually going to be even shorter, because I see this curve here as just being, it's just such a short curve, and then it moves into, let's try this. Not sure if that looks better or not. So I've done my measuring, and when I draw, I try to combine as many different techniques as we can. So I've done my measuring, I've done my sort of technical drawing, and now I'm going to start looking with my eye. I'm going to start checking negative shapes. I'm going to try to follow the contour of things. And I think that's part of what a good drawing is a good drawing sort of incorporates different elements or different techniques. So it's not leaning too heavily on just being a technical drawing. It's not leaning too heavily on any one thing. I need to check my ellipses. This one looks like something is wrong with it. This one is going to mostly be invisible, so I'm not going to worry too much about it, but I do want it to look somewhat believable. I'm going to start working on this ellipse. I'm not buying it. It doesn't look like believably the top of the bottle to me. So I need to figure out what I need to do to change this. The part of the glass that I see, the thickness, the wall of the glass, it's very thin here, and then it gets thicker the further it goes to the top and the sides. So that might be part of my problem, is that I didn't do that enough. And again, that's part of the foreshortening too, because this is closer to me and it's getting compressed. And I'm going to take a step back again. It's starting to look okay. I know that this is getting closer, but it feels also like it's getting too flat. So just because it's getting closer together doesn't mean that my ellipse has to get flattened. That can't be right. And now it's looking pretty good. It looks like a foreshortened bottle. I think that I believe it for the most part. I believe the proportion. I believe the way that it's turning in space. One more time before I start doing any shading, I'm just going to quickly measure my vertical and horizontal measuring points. So starting here, what I'm going to do, I know that this is the furthest point out and that it doesn't touch anything, but I am going to just drop a vertical line down, and I want to check this negative shape. I've never been fully committed to this angle, so I feel like if I try to look at the negative shape, I can check one more time, and it looks good. So I guess that angle is actually pretty correct. I'm going to move into the next point in my vertical composition, which is the top part of this bottle. And if I did this right, the top ellipse ring of this bottle is going to come just shy of this edge. So that's correct. So far, so good. If I move into the next point, it is going to be this bottom edge. So now I'm going to drop another vertical from this bottom edge, this bottom corner, and I'll see where does that come. And what I want it to do is go right through the center of this this lip part, and it does. So I'm doing pretty good. The more points I measure from, the more I will be able to know that my proportion is accurate. So let's try this corner, and this corner, if I did it right, is going to come to right here. So let's see what happens. It's close, but it's not quite there. So that means, I think that means that there's something with this ellipse. Like it needs to be made a little bit more like this. And then I need to balance my quadrants. So I just need to close up that ellipse a little more, and I think I'm going to have the right shape. So see, I have a lot of measuring lines over it. I'm okay with that. I like seeing the measuring lines, and it helps your proportion. So a lot of people feel like they have to erase every measuring line, and I don't think that's really necessary. They help you get your proportion right. So now I'm going to look for some horizontals. There's not too many, but I'm going to start here, this back corner. Should be going through the neck of the bottle and just barely touching. Perfect. Should be just barely touching this side here. So that's this little corner part here. Now I'm going to go to this corner, and let's see what happens. This corner comes past this. I think that this is a little bit high, actually. I think it should be coming to like actually here, but I'm going to see if we could just sort of live with it for now. And then I think I'm pretty much out of horizontals to measure from. Let me try this. The base of the bottle has been a little bit tricky for me because of the fact that it's square and I have it tilted at that angle. So I'm never really sure if this is, and then because of the glass, this part here, it disappears so much and it gets so obscured that I've had a lot of questions about if I got that base drawn right or not. When I stand back, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty solid, but I just see this side disappearing so much, which looks to be true to me, but it feels, I don't know, it just feels a little bit wrong. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to do some shading on the bottle. I probably won't finish the shading on video, but I'll start it just so you could see. And I'm going to start by putting in just the darkest darks. I'm not going to start by putting in the darkest darks with my darkest pencil. I'm going to start by putting them in with an HB. And right now I want to indicate where they are. As I'm putting in my darkest darks, I'm also remeasuring. So every opportunity that I can, I'm checking my measurements. I know that they look pretty good when I just did all the vertical and horizontal measuring lines, but I'm never really convinced that I'm always rechecking up until I finish the drawing. I'm always rechecking. So I use shading often as an opportunity to like edit and to reevaluate where I've placed things. You want to do it as you're going though, because you don't want to remove things after you've shaded. You want to try to avoid that if you can, because it could be tricky. Got another real dark here. Got another one here. And I'm just trying to draw the shapes of the darks that I see. This is my biggest dark. This is almost like a long straight line that goes down right on the inside wall. It follows the angle that the bottle is receding at. And I didn't put this in here. It comes down to about here. There's this square, you know, where I can kind of see the base here, but it's difficult because it's sort of distorted. So I think that it comes from here. This is not the darkest dark. It's like a mid-tone. I think this is similar to this, although I'm not sure. This is tricky because this is the base of the bottle as seen through the bottle. So it's not really it can't really be mathematically measured because the bottle itself is distorting it. So it doesn't look like really where the base would be, but it has to still sort of look believable. So once again, let me take a step back. It doesn't look like I did anything terrible. It doesn't look like I have any major disasters. So now what I want to do is with my 6H, I want to just indicate where the lightest lights are going to be. So if you have something that's made out of glass, you're going to have some really dark darks and some really light lights. And the light lights are bright, and I'm going to try, if I can, to not get any pencil on them. So I'm going to try to just mark them in right now. A couple of them I already have to erase out. So when you erase your lights, there's always going to be a little bit of pencil left over. So that's why I'm going to try right now to just indicate them. And I'm going to try to remind myself not to draw over them if I can. And I've got some highlights here on the side. One goes right up to this neck and up to this dark part. Sometimes on something that's shiny like glass, you have bright brights and dark darks right next to each other. So it's not like if you draw something that's more like has a matte finish and it has a light on it, you're gonna find very evenly moving shadows that sort of just fade gradually from dark to light. With something that's shiny, the switch from dark to light can be very abrupt. So that's something that you want to look out for if you want to make something look shiny. Got another highlight here. What I'm going to try to do now is with my HB pencil, I'm going to try to just put one even layer of a mid-tone on everything except for those highlights that I just erased out. And I'm going to try to be careful and remember where they are. Again, I'm checking that curve. Right now I'm looking at it, it looks a little flat. So is this something that I'm going to try to fix while I'm shading? Got a really tiny highlight here. It's so small that I was going to just say forget it, but Now that I see it, I want to try to go for it. It's giving me the back part of the neck of the bottle. So it's actually pretty important in getting the structure of the drawing looking right. Here's my highlight that I'm going to not draw over, and here's another highlight. What I'm doing when I'm putting this tone is I'm not really looking and trying to get it right now. I'm just trying to make it really even so that now when I finish this, every part of my bottle is going to have a nice even kind of base tone on it, except for the highlights. Now there is a slight lip on this bottle, but I really don't want to exaggerate. I don't want to do it too much because I feel that's going to look really weird if I overdo it. So I'm actually gonna I'm gonna leave it alone for now, and then maybe I'll try to erase it out later. Sometimes you notice subtle things like that, like a little lip, and it's nearly impossible to do it without making it too prominent, and it looks really awkward. So maybe for the purpose of the video, I'll just do the shading on the neck of the bottle so that you don't have to watch the whole thing. And then I have back here, just behind this, I could see that back side of the bottle again, but this time it's as a dark, so it's not as a light. And it's not the darkest dark, it's just sort of a middle. So now I'm going to look a little bit harder at this bottle. I've got my base coat on, I've got my highlights preserved. I'm going to sharpen my 4B to a nice fine point. And I'm going to try to put in some of my darks and make them as dark as they should be. All right. I got a dark here that I didn't really put in before. I don't know why. Maybe because it's not the darkest dark. Got another one here. And this dark that I put in, it's in the right spot, but it needs to be darker, at least around this edge. So it's dark right here, and then it's dark here too, but not as much. So I'm not doing any blending with my finger or with a blending stump or anything like that. I'm just going to try to control everything with my pencil. That's the way that I prefer to draw. Not everybody does, but I feel like this gives you a lot more control. Blending stumps are useful for some purposes, but I do feel like students tend to overuse them. They do actually have kind of a limited application. So it's better to just sort of avoid them, especially when you're first learning how to draw. And never, never blend with your finger. Underneath this highlight, and actually on the top of it too, there's a slight dark. And that's something that you'll find happens in shiny things. I don't know if I drew that right. I think it's a little more flat, like that. And then this is really dark. This is, it might not even, the 4B might not even do it. I might need the 6B. So hopefully, even as early as now, you could see how putting in the darks and lights is starting to give this a sense that it's glass and that it's shiny. I've got just the slightest little lines indicating that lip on the neck that I was talking about. I want to keep it really subtle. There's one here. And then I have some lines going vertically as well. I've got this, I don't even know what this is, but it's beautiful. It's a nice, just a nice sort of oblong shaped dark area. I don't know what's causing it, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the way it looks. I've got a dark here. Another one here. Sometimes if they get too abrupt everywhere, it looks something like spotted instead of shiny, and I'm going to try to avoid that, obviously. But I do have another nice middle dark here, and it goes right through, and it goes down to the end of the neck. So it's not as dark as my others. So you want to get a range, so you don't want just darks and lights, you want to find the full range, some medium darks, light darks. Okay, so let's see if that looks good enough for me to stop there to give you an idea. It's starting to look shiny. I don't like this, how these have this, I think this needs to be darker all the way through, but it's starting to look shiny and it's starting to look transparent. So I'm going to finish it and I will show you my finished product as an example, but I think that I can cut the video off now. I think you have a good enough of an idea of how I'm doing this shading. I want this to be more round. And I want this to be more So that's my bottle neck. I'll do the shading on the rest of the bottle and I'll show you as an example, but this is my foreshortened bottle, and have fun drawing your own this week. Thanks for watching. Bye.